Let's moving on. I would now like to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Kavita Sharma, ma'am, with immense pride and pleasure. She is the definition of tenacity and vigilance and the embodiment of excellence and strength. Dr. Kavita Sharma, ma'am, has served as the former president of South Asian University, New Delhi, for 5 years and as the director of Indian International Center, New Delhi, from 2008 to 2014. She has led one of the most prestigious educational institutions, the Hindu College, Delhi University, to greater heights for 10 years as its principal. She also shared her wisdom as the senior faculty in the prestigious Hindu College, Delhi University, for 27 glorious years. She has been a recipient of Indo Canadian Shastri Fellowship twice for dealing with different aspects of the diaspora and with a Fulbright Fellowship New Century Scholar for research on higher education in the 21st century, access and equality, 2007-2008. She has authored several globally acclaimed books. I welcome you, ma'am. We are delighted and honored to have you with us on this platform today. I welcome you with folded hands.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. And thank you for all the wonderful encomiums that you have showered on me. Not sure whether I need them, I deserve them, but thank you so much. And I'm very happy Women's Day to everybody.
To you too, ma'am.
But as I put up on my Facebook account that it will only be a happy Women's Day, everybody, all segments of society, resolved every day to remove the discriminatory things that women have to go through. Now, today, I was asked, we've had a bit of a confusion. First, it was Queens of Mahabharata, and then it was science. So I actually wanted to deal with women scientists because I don't think many people talk about it. Now, for example, you had on 11th February, the 5th UN International Day of Women and Girls in Science. But I doubt if anybody knows about it or anyone even celebrated it. I mean, if you don't know about it, how can you celebrate it? Also, if you see the women, the statistics of UN, only 30% of world's researchers are women. And it is surprising that in some countries like Bolivia, where you wouldn't expect it, they're 63%. But then France, for example, they're only 26%. It is also found even in the best developed places like Sweden, 60% enroll for bachelor's degree in science, 49% actually do their doctoral degrees, but then they seem to fall off. And only 36% researchers are there. So I could go on with all this, but even the women in the private sector of research are not well represented in India, hardly. And even in the government sectors, they don't reach the highest positions by and large. So what is it that we need to do? What we need to do is that it's very important that we encourage girls right from the beginning, from their school days, to like mathematics and science. Everybody has such a phobia about it that girls kind of drop off on it. And you see in STEM subjects, that is the science, technology, engineering, and maths, the women are in a minority. Or even if they are there, they're really teaching rather than researching in high-profile labs. And South Asia, since I dealt with South Asia for 5 long years, we have the smallest number of women researchers, only 17%, which is not very far away from the sub-Saharan Africa, which is 13%. And Nepal has the lowest, but India is not far behind. We have only 14% women who actually do research in science. It is actually Sri Lanka that is way ahead of us. And they have 39% of women who are there in science research. Even in agricultural sciences, which I thought women being so interested in food and having to deal with food all the time and productivity, and many of them cultivate their little patches of land to be able to provide food for their families, they are not represented in agricultural science at all. And it is actually Bangladesh, which has a lot of women in agricultural science and is catching up with women in science fields. Now, this is not something new. if you know, Marie Curie initially was not given a Nobel Prize. She was only considered a helper to her husband. It is when a lot of hue and cry went up that she was given a Nobel Prize. Another very famous scientist, Rosalind Franklin, 1968, James Watson, another very, very great American scientist, he said that the place of women is not in a lab, or at least not in their own labs. It is in somebody else's lab, meaning it should be in a man's lab. Why does this happen? One is hierarchical segregation, because women are they don't have the status of heading the family. They're always considered number two. Those are the patriarchal norms. Then you have the territorial segregation. Women are, expected to stay home or do employment, which will bring in supplementary income. So, as in Japan, they used to say women's income is like the dessert in the family dinner. So, also there are some subjects which are just considered male subjects, and there are others female subjects. Men actually are usually found in chemistry, physics, engineering. Women will do botany, zoology, psychology, and these are considered like soft subjects. So there are some stereotypes. Women are considered warm, nurturing, and I was hearing some of this discussion, kind, and they have internalized this. Men are supposed to be strong and powerful, but if you want to run your lab and you want to head an institution and you want to be in a decision making position, you have to be strong and powerful. Now, your method of being strong and powerful may be different from a man's, but you cannot just constantly keep nurturing people. Then we don't have enough role models, among women who would like in the field of science and technology. What is important is family support. There's a wonderful book which Indian Academy of Science brought out. It's called Leelavati's Daughters. Does anyone here know who was Leelavati? Leelavati was a 12th century woman, and she was the daughter of Bhaskaracharya number two. The first Bhaskaracharya was in 7th century. This is the second Bhaskaracharya. And what happened, there's an apocryphal story about Leela, and that is Bhaskaracharya was a mathematician and astrologer, and he figured out that his daughter would never get married, and even if she got married, she would not have children. But he arranged a marriage for her. And what he did was he created a water clock. So he, the water would drip, and he said, on that Muhurat, you must get married. Now, Leelavati was very curious. So she went and she peeked on it, and one of her pearls fell. And so the water clock went awry. So the Muhurat passed and she didn't get. So I don't know whether that story is true or not true. But then her father taught her mathematics and astrology. And she was a great mathematician. But I was so intrigued. I've read this Leelavati's book that he made for her. He said, I'll do a book for you which will live eternally. And see how he teaches her maths. Tell me, my young girl, whose tremulous eyes resemble those of a young fawn, what is the product of 135 multiplied by 12? That's the way he teaches her. Then let me show you another one. I just love the way he teaches her. He says, um, one second. He says, the square root of a flock of geese seeing the clouds collect flew to the Manas lake. 1/8 of the whole flew from the edge of the water amongst a multitude of water lilies, and 3 couple were observed playing in the water. Tell me, my beautiful young girl, what was the number of geese? So this is the way he goes on. I wish we were taught maths like that. I would have been much better in mathematics than what I am today. But then, let me take you through the more modern part of it. The first woman to graduate in the British Empire was a lady called Kadambini Basu Ganguly. And she was a Brahmo woman, part of the reform movement, and she faced a lot of criticism. She was a mother of 8 children, and so she had to devote a lot of time to her household affairs. She had a supportive husband, and she went abroad and came back. And when she came back, one of the magazines wrote that she's a whore. She goes out of the house. But her husband took the editor of that magazine to court and got him a punishment of 6 months. I wonder how many husbands will do that today. Anandi Ben Joshi. Now, she was the first, she was another very supportive husband, but also very abusive husband. She also became a doctor, she became an obstetrician. She was married at the age of 9, and her husband tried to teach her, but then he would he would get very angry with her, and he would throw things at her. He would push the chair, he would beat her with a wood. But finally, he supported her, and she went to Pennsylvania, and she became a doctor, an obstetrician. And her thesis was obstetrics among Aryan Hindus, because women had no access to doctors. There were no female doctors, and they couldn't go to men. So they had really no access to doctors. So then, and she died at the age of 22, she got tuberculosis there. And then they sent her back. But on the ship, nobody would treat a brown woman. And when she reached her cousin's place in Pune, no doctor would treat her, no Ayurvedic doctor would treat her, because she had crossed the societal boundaries and was not worthy to be treated. And so she succumbed at the age of 22. Now, if you take more modern issues, then 1918, I've read that whole book, Leelavati's Daughters is what it is called. So Anna Mani, for example, 1918 born, one of 8 children, deeply immersed in books. She was supposed to get married and lead a normal life. She said no. And she refused to take diamond earrings that her parents got her for her birthday, and said, I want Encyclopedia Britannica. So that's what she got. And then she tried to do her PhD. And in spite of her dissertation, she was not awarded a PhD. So hers is the only PhD doctoral thesis which is there in the C.V. Raman Institute, which is without a doctorate. She never got her degree because of being a woman. Um, Talking of these discriminations, I mean, you have women, for example, there was, trying to remember her name, Kamla Soni. Kamla Soni, she tried to go to what was then Tata Institute of Science or Indian Institute of Science. And the great Nobel laureate, C.V. Raman, refused to take her. He said, I will not accept you in my institute because you're a woman and you will distract all the men. And women are not research material. Then she did satyagraha in his office, and she managed to convince him, and finally became the director of the Institute of Science. But even there, because she was a woman, her job was delayed by 4 years. So these societal attitudes are reflected very, very much in all the women trying to do science, because it's still considered a male dominated thing. Radha Balakrishnan, she was in Delhi, she was in a good school, she opted to take science. What did her teacher say? You girls will not take science because you're depriving a, they said you're depriving a boy of his worth, of a place in science, and that you will deprive him of a good job. Now this reminded me of Indraprasth School, the first school in Delhi to be opened, which was a non-mission school. And there, they had to beg people to send their girls to school, and they were sent in a bus which had barricades all around with parda around them. And they said, the girls, we will not corrupt the girls, we'll teach them math, we will not teach them science, we will not teach them math, they will study Ramayana, domestic science, needlework, and the scriptures. And gradually they got the first science lab. It was thanks to the vision of the teachers. So the other thing, as I read the book, I realized how important the teachers were. It is these women who struggled were supported by their families, by their parents, and the influence of the father. Even when the mother felt that no, this girl should get married, the father supported. Most of the time, the mothers were also very supportive at the end of it. Now, we have Asima Chatterjee. She talks about the hardships that scientists had to undergo. There were no scholarships available. And even the supervisors, they had to spend their own money to buy equipment and chemicals. The research scholars were paid nothing. The Department of Science and Technology had not been set up. CSIR was not set up. a department of biotechnology was not set up. But she said my vice chancellors, people like Satyen Bose, Meghnad Saha, S.K. Mitra, these are all very well known names. If you study the history of Indian Parliament, they were all there in the Indian Parliament the first few years. They all supported her. Then finally, I've just picked out some women who sort of showed different struggles. Hema Ramachandran. She said, I had internalized being a woman so much, I didn't dare open my mouth in front of the boys. And then very gradually, she came out of that syndrome, and she said there are three types of male colleagues. One is the elder ones who are protective, and to the point, they will stifle you. They will say, how can you go to that conference alone to read a paper? The second types are those who make it intentionally difficult for you to do any work and to prove that a woman can't do it. Then you have the younger generation, which is more egalitarian, who are more willing to give and take. They have married working women. So things have changed drastically. So also many women talk about how their research interests got aborted or they had to change them because they had to keep up with the women's transfers everywhere. And that's the final woman I'm talking about. That is Sulbha Pathak. She's a microbiologist, and for years she worked voluntarily in unpaid research situations. And her husband went to Netherlands. She dropped everything, went to Netherlands. Her PhD took a very long time because then she had to negotiate a long-term, distance PhD without internet, without anything, right? And so constantly, she said there was a struggle between marriage and profession because either you have to sacrifice, you leave everybody, you go by yourself, you need a supportive husband, you need supportive in-laws, supportive parents who will come and help you out. Otherwise, what happens to your children? So, to sum up, what I'm saying is that for women and science and technology, why I chose to talk about it is because this is the era of science. Any time you need a solution to a problem, and COVID has shown us we need science, environment, we need science, nutrition, we need science, for everything, we need science. So, unless you excel in science, you will not make a place for yourself in the world. And so, what do you need for this? Supportive parents, especially fathers, because even today fathers are decision makers. You need enlightened families with the right values, because many of these women, they had meager resources, their families had meager resources, and but many of them didn't opt out saying that they will educate the boys and not the girls. So you need that. You need parents who are willing to make sacrifices for your education even when they're short of resources. You need very supportive husbands who will help you in child rearing at least. You need very supportive parental home and a very supportive in-laws who will look after your children when you are spend long hours in the labs. Then gradually changing societal norms. You have to negotiate with it. As one of the women said, I understood. She went to IIT Kanpur. She was not paid. She said it was a privilege that they even allowed me to enter the lab. And she said, well, I knew there was going to be opposition, so I just built my career around that opposition. Let me just accept it. And even if I'm not paid, it's fine. But they're gradually changing societal norms. More schemes are available. Now, Department of Science and Technology has a scheme that a woman takes a break in her career in science and technology and can come back. But what is needed is determination, grit, passion. I haven't told you all of that, but many of these women also suffered from cancer. I don't know why so many women scientists have suffered from cancer. Maybe the stress of it, maybe the exposure to various chemicals or radiations or whatever it is, and that needs to be still looked at. But I'm really amazed at the number who got cancer. So there we are. That's women in science.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I was not like, and I'm sure like a lot of us were not aware of all the stories you shared today.
Yeah.
And I'm like really surprised to hear what women scientists have gone through all through the time. I'm really glad that you brought this up and you took up this topic instead of
Yeah.
another topic. We all feel the same way. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And wonderful to be here and among everybody here. Thank you.
Yes.
I see
Thank you
Jiva
so much.
John here, whom I told her about my Mahabharata thing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I'm listening to your speech. It's quite interesting. I was thinking of all those things now, pondering over that. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad that we took up this topic instead of that one.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much. Wonderful to be with all
Now,
of you. And it's nice to see so many young women taking the lead role here.